sucked. You thought the whole thing sucked, so your opinion doesn't count. I think it just means I knew it way earlier than everyone else. And that was it. That was a whole that was the whole text message. I'm not even gonna respond because like I'm trying to see how angry I could get. I was gonna call her, but then I knew she would just yell, and then we wouldn't get to have the whole conversation.
You're like, I wouldn't be able to get out that how much I hated it. So if you're just tuning in, everybody, welcome to the Anime Intermission. I think this is episode 4 now. I think we're on episode 4.
I think this is episode 5.
It's either 4 or 5, and we did this last time too, which is really funny. We did the same exact thing. This is gonna be part of the cold open meme from now on. But
like, what episode is it? I mean, your guess is as good as mine.
Right? But yeah, this has actually turned out to be one of the more popular series, so thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to us ramble on about animes. We're going to get right into it. This week, actually, Zach watched most of it, well, a good portion of it, half watched it, speed watched it. The Attack on Titan finale, we're going to talk about that at the end, but we, first we'll talk about the animes that we're watching separately before we get into the animes that we watched together. I've been watching.
I'll talk about the animes that are good. Chris will talk about the anime that is not good.
I mean, unfortunately, this week, this is very true because the two animes I've been watching are Rurouni Kenshin and Goblin Slayer, which I've resulted to watching. It's not even at 2 times speed. It's got to be at like 8 times speed, right? Like I showed you how fast it went.
Come to think of it, Captain America's army. He was forced to commit arson. So that really, first one comes. Where are you, idol? Kenjin, what did I do the home industry before? We did Sanosuke work together. We don't society. We're going to life. Sorry, I didn't know about society.
And
they was so high pitched. It was like Nightcore.
Yeah, I'm watching Nightcore Kenshin and Nightcore Goblin Slayer. And so here's my review of each of them very quickly. I'm going to do them in Nightcore mode. Rurouni Kenshin sucks. Rurouni Kenshin was very good. They should never remade it. Everything about it was very good in the beginning, and everything that got rid of it in the charm was very bad before. Goblin Slayer isn't good either. Goblin Slayer needs to go. I can't do that twice in a row. It's too much to like. I'd have to have it prepared. Do you think Busta Rhymes just improvises all of those raps? No.
I mean, I think Eminem does because he's the rap god.
It's true. He is the rap god. But yeah, so I mean, Goblin Slayer, it's getting lewd. I don't understand. It's like, I don't know. It's just not what I wanted. It really like. I'd like to use them into a segue into Frieren, which is like probably anime of the season, if not anime of the year. But we'll get into that after Zach talks about Undead Unluck.
So I started watching Undead Unluck after seeing it randomly on Hulu. Like, I think I saw a couple clips like on TikTok, which is typically what happens. I'm like, oh, I wonder what this anime is. And then I go look up to see where it is. And then if it's on Crunchyroll or Hulu, I watch it. But if it's on High Dive, I guess we're never going to see that anime.
Yeah. Oh, here. I mean, I forgot about doing this. This is part of the whole thing. It's like I was going to look it up and be all like...
So it gives me a lot of Needless vibes, if you remember, where it's like, I can't tell you remember exactly what was happening, but then I remember watching it. So the main character's power is like, he's basically a zombie and he can regenerate forever. See, like they show it. Mm-hmm. And then the girl's power is anytime she touches somebody, they get extremely bad luck. And the more emotion attached to it, the worse it is. So there's that one, the end of the first episode, she like kisses him and then a meteor comes out of the sky and destroys the building. So he's trying to be with her so he can die, because he's been alive for, I think, at least 150 years. And you're going through this whole series of like, they're fighting people who have random powers. And the whole thing is like they call them negators, like negate. And so there's ones that do it to themselves and ones that do it to the outside world. And so his is like he negates death. There was one who makes things so they're, how do I say this? They're trying to stop these bad things from happening, these rules that get imposed upon humanity, and they have to do these missions that it's really, really weird.
Yeah.
Like the storyline is so strange, but it's like not super serious. Like, I think there's been 6 episodes. There's only been 2 episodes where the main character hasn't been hanging dong. Like, like they finally got him enclosed the last episode.
Okay, well, I mean,
and I think that it's very fan servicey. Like, there's like a whole section where like they're trying to build up his bad luck. So she's like she's on his back and she's got like her shirt lifted up and just pressing her boobs into his back.
All right. Well, I mean, it sounds fun. I mean, it definitely looks like it has some production put into it too. I mean, just looking at the trailer, it already looks better than Attack on Titan.
Is that going to be the theme? We're just going to be like,
yeah,
just relate it back to Attack on Titan.
Yeah, everything.
It's a good palate cleanser. Like, I know that I'm not going to have to take it super seriously. They're just going to be, it's going to be super tropey. And I don't know. I haven't been like upset that I have to watch it.
Yeah.
Like,
do you look forward to it, or is it just something you're just like, maybe I'll just put this on?
I think if the production quality wasn't good, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
But there was a whole episode of like CG zombies this last episode, so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
But the main characters are not CG.
Better.
And it's just like it feels like when you were watching like My Hero Academia, where you're watching how he's learned to use his powers for good. Like he snaps off parts of his body and uses the regeneration to like propel him forward to like fly and stuff.
Like he's figuring out creative ways to use his abilities.
Well, I mean, it's like he's already known and we're just seeing them because he's been alive for so long.
Right.
So it's been good so far. They've only really introduced like 4 or 5 characters, and everybody, they're on this table of this team now where there's like 10 of them and they all have some kind of power, and we only know like what 3 of them are, and it's like that's part of the process. But to get on the team, they had to kill 2 of them, and that all happened in like the first 4 episodes. I would just go into it with like not low expectations, but it's not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Stone, but if Dr. Stone was good, you're not watching it for depth. You're watching it for just the flashiness and a good joke and probably the icky. Is it ecchi? Icky?
I mean, it's not in there that much.
Yeah,
it's mostly just her. Because they have to make physical contact, sort of like it's Rogue. She always has gloves on and like long sleeves,
like the Fire Force girl.
Well, but she does it intentionally. The Fire Force girl does not do it intentionally.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's a good palate cleanser. It's kind of like when One Punch Man was on. Like, I'm not in it because One Punch Man has a great story, or the main character is really good. Like, it's not that it's satire like One Punch Man, but it's got that same kind of vibe.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, like, I'm always down for something that's a little bit less serious because, I mean, the animes that we are watching are getting very, very serious, and they have a lot of depth to them. The ones that we actually care about. Which one do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about Frieren, or do you want to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen first?
I want to talk about the one that's worse first.
Oh. I mean, I feel like I really like Jujutsu Kaisen this season.
Why did you start talking about it immediately then?
I don't like how you set me up like that. I feel like you set me up.
I would have said it. I'll say it with you. Frieren is better than Jujutsu Kaisen this season. Every time I watch I watch Jujutsu Kaisen first every week, you guys. I watch it before Frieren, and I'm like, damn, this fucking Jujutsu Kaisen episode was fucking crazy.
Yeah,
and then I watch the Frieren episode, and then I'm like, never mind. This episode was way better.
Well, okay, so we've been kind of having a little bit of discussion, and it's only because I want to defend Jujutsu Kaisen. It's so unfortunate that Frieren was made during this season, because, like, this Jujutsu Kaisen season has been really good. Like, the powers have been fun, the animation has been all hand-drawn. You can tell it's all hand-drawn frames when you look at it. Like, and the battles have been exciting. You're seeing these people come into their characters, and you're asking the question, what can come next, right? Which is really important, especially for an anime. And the fights are cool, right? But I mean, if we're comparing it to Frieren, it's a completely different level of maturity in anime. It's like you watch this for the same reasons you kind of watch a shonen, even though it's more in line with a seinen, or as you would call it, the dark shonens.
I feel like this season is way more chaotic, but it's intentional. Like,
Yeah.
I understand what they're doing, and there's a lot of like body morphing that happens, like to show like movement and like, I mean, even this part, right? Like this part is so absurd.
Right, he's just like
I remember
tapping
when
with things, yeah.
and it's just like I feel like it's when in like Naruto or Bleach where they get that first exposure to like a higher level of power, where we're trying to show the scale now,
Right.
and you know they're Sukuna is on there right now,
Yeah,
and we're getting to see, you're like, oh, I mean, we watched Gojo like body him in the first episode, how bad could it be? And then we just like, oh my god.
Well, the funny thing is too is like we've seen these powers, right, where they're self-contained until they become the what do they call them? I can't think of what they're called. The zone, the
Domain.
Domain, thank you. Yes, like they pull them into the domain, and then it becomes like this big power, right? And but other than that, like the fights have been taking place kind of like this. Like something's thrown, they're jumping across buildings. But I mean, in the last episode, last weekend, it was becoming like city destroying, to whereas before we only saw Gojo doing powers that could have been at the level of city build, like destroying.
And I feel like domains are often treated in this show like it's like the first one to use their domain is usually the one who loses.
Yeah, I guess you're right there. Yeah, it's like you played your card too early kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you hit your nos too early.
Yeah.
Granny shifting, not double clutching like you should.
Well, what'd you think about the tug of war when they were trying to pull him through the little hole in the domain? But then the strategy, I guess, didn't really work because, you know, the spirit of his
OG
dead
just popped
dad,
out of
yeah.
them and then bodied somebody.
Yeah.
And now, but like after the last episode, we're just waiting. We're like, who's going to explain it to him? I want to see the conversation that's going to happen where they're like, who was that guy?
Do you think they are gonna
Just some
explain it
random
to him?
guy.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is like we keep asking what's going to happen next, but it's like, yeah, in this show, it's like what can happen next. The scale has gotten so much bigger than they originally had set it, just from this arc. So I don't know. I don't know. It's like it's getting crazy. I can't see how it's going to be like. I don't know where it's going to go from here, and I like that a lot.
I think that what they're doing is like something that you see a lot of shonen do, where you're showing the progression, and it's like especially with
Megumi,
something like that.
It's Megumi, yeah, it's Megumi.
And so like watching him use his powers like very differently than we've seen them use them before, like showing like that ability to kind of adapt on the fly, I think makes the characters more interesting. But I think it's sort of suffering from something we kind of talked about. There's too many characters.
Yeah.
Like there's too many characters for us to care about all of these characters or remember everybody's name right now.
And they're still
like,
introducing characters at that.
Like, and I know it's like, well, we're going to allude, you're going to see more about these characters, but like when these characters are facing death, it's kind of hard for you to be super interested in what's happening to them, right? Like, I understand you're building tension with like those two girls, right? You're just like, they established the backstory like an episode later, but it's like when the stuff was happening, you're like, well, I don't remember who these people are, right? Like,
Well,
it's
yeah,
just happening.
I feel like that's kind of just like one of the strengths of them is like they're not afraid to introduce a character and just have them die immediately after. Like, and I think that's both like it's good and bad, right? It's because you get attached to these characters and then they're dead, but it's like kind of Game of Thronesy where it's like, oh man, like I really wanted to see that person evolve, or like why did you do that if they weren't going to be that strong, right? But I don't know. I think it adds to the impermanence of things. Like when all of this is happening and all of this chaos is happening and people are actually dying, like they had a backstory and everything, it adds to the unpredictability of it. It makes you think that no one is safe.
Well, yeah, it was like, I mean, Naruto didn't pull the trigger on that until like Asuma died, right? Like where you felt like one of the, like a good character could die.
Right, like a staple character at that, yeah.
And now we're like at the point where it's like things are happening so quickly that like you realize, you know, it's sort of something they kind of established earlier on, like how easy it was to die to like a curse or something like that. Like we're actually getting to see the effects of it, right? Because it really makes it seem like the special grades were kind of pulling their punches, and the only reason it looked like they weren't very strong was because they were fighting Gojo. So like I'm interested in like what's gonna happen and with some of the characters, but I mean it's just like when we were watching the backstory arc that started the season where I was like, I just want to learn more about these villains. I want to see what happens with these villains. I don't really give a shit about.
What did you think of him then? Like when he had his death moment and he was kind of explaining how he wanted to be human, and Sukuna was like, "Oh no, that's stupid. You're stupid." Like Sukuna is like the ultimate force of chaos and evil, right? Against everything. He's kind of like the Joker at this point, right?
Well, I'm the Joker, baby.
Well, he's supposed to be like the antithesis, right? Like. Like Gojo's so bright that he casts this huge shadow, right? And something has to occupy that space. I think it's doing a lot of, like, obviously they've been trying to humanize them, you know, given that they're trying to run from Gojo the entire time. And like, they understand that, he's basically got his foot on their neck the whole time. Right? And it gave me those vibes of when we were watching the Espada arc of Bleach, like where like they humanized like a lot of the top tier characters, and they gave their backstory. Yeah. And then it's like I don't know. You only get character growth at the very end.
It's got some of the coolest fight scenes I've seen in a long time, and none of it is. I love that none of it is CG. Like it's got a lot of style to it, and I think that's what I liked about Jujutsu Kaisen in the first place. Like, yes, it does rely on some tropes, like shonen tropes, but I think it breaks through them with its style.
Well, and it's like, what is it? Like you pick three, like story, animation, visuals. Well, I mean, are we just gonna put visuals slash music, right? Like it's like you got to pick two, right? And then like one of them's gonna be weaker, and obviously in JJK it's the story, right? Like it's super tropey, and it's like it's more us knowing what's gonna happen and then seeing how that unfolds, right? Like we know that it's gonna be super chaotic, but what does that actually look like, right? Like you make it more bombastic, more huge, so then it's like a spectacle for us, and we don't have that like minimal reaction, right? Like, oh, bright colors, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think unfortunately I have to compare it to the Attack on Titan finale as well, because the Attack on Titan finale was supposed to be chaos, right? It's like chaos is happening, everything's happening at once, and it's all coming to a head, and everything's resolving, right? How is that so much worse? The question, I guess, is than what they're doing in Jujutsu Kaisen is because it has none of that style that Jujutsu Kaisen has.
Like I watched it with you, and there's like only so many characters at the very end, and Jujutsu Kaisen is like kind of building up towards it, right? Where I feel like a lot of those shows, when you start to approach the climax, they fumble, right? Like where it's like you can only escalate so far, right? And you see it especially in shonen, right? Because you have to keep building it up, keep raising the stakes, raising the level, where it becomes to the point where I think that Jujutsu Kaisen is like on this side of the line right now. But I think it's when you get to the point where everybody can die at any time, nothing feels like it has value. Yeah. Right? So there's no risk. So I'm like, if you just keep killing characters, it makes each death less useful.
Right. So it's just like, that's when you know it's coming to a head, I feel like, is when they start trimming the hedges, so to speak. Is just like, okay, we have a lot of plot lines, a lot of storylines coming around, and it's like, we got to start killing people and letting people live. We got to decide who's getting to the end game, right? And it's like...
Well, and shonens do that a lot, too, right? Where it's like, you can feel that there are points where the characters just die because it needs it for the plot, right? Like there needs to be more risk. The characters need to have something to fight for. And I kind of feel like that can happen to this, and I've seen some spoilers on TikTok and like bad things. Yeah. Like, so I'm just like, I wonder when they're gonna hit that point, because I feel like, especially with the shonen, the longer it takes you to get to that point, like the longer it takes for you to see yourself become the villain, is like perfect, right? Like if you overstay your welcome, which is what a lot of shonens do, people start to get less interested, right? And then you need to become, you need to have like original villains, like a good storyline, right? And I wonder what's going to happen with that, because we know that Skuna's the big bad, right? And it's like, well, we're going to see what's going to happen with the big bad now.
Right. Well, that's what I'm thinking. Is it's like, I feel like it's doing that thing where it's coming to a head, right? Where it's like they're going to start killing people. They're going to make all this death mattering less. Then they're going to have another arc after this. Like, or is this the quintessential arc? Like, that's where I'm at with it. Like, there definitely needs to level, it needs to go further. Like, it's in that shonen sweets, or I guess hit or miss spot where it's going to be either really good or really bad. It's either going to overstay its welcome, it's going to, go bad on the shelf, so to speak, or you're going to eat it up in time. It's going to be the perfect portion size.
And, greed leads me to believe that that's not going to happen.
Well, do you think... All right, here's the question then. Do you think Frieren, which is, I think, both of our... what's it called? Anime of the season and the year right now.
It's going to be 28 episodes.
It is? Oh, okay. You looked it up just now.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, me and Zach are both super into Frieren right now. Zach talked about it a little bit on the last podcast about how he had been marathoning it before the podcast, and how if we hadn't done the podcast, he would have kept watching Frieren. He talked me into watching it, and I understand why now. Just because time has been strange for me, and I've been doing a lot, I didn't get a chance to marathon it like he did, but I did end up watching it in like long blocks. And this is one of the most beautiful animes I have seen in so long. And I don't mean beautiful just visually. I mean, if you look at what we're looking at right now, you can see that it's beautiful visually. But the storyline is beautiful. The characters are beautiful. The way everything is moving is beautiful. Like, it's so well done.
Even the storytelling.
Yeah,
right?
it's so well done.
I think I randomly saw it like on Crunchyroll, or I saw a clip or something like that. I was like, oh, this seems cool. And then like, it sort of got me the same way like the first season of Shield Hero did, where like that whole first episode, you're like, oh, is this just the same shit as always, right? Like, I'm gonna see the same things. And then when she breaks down at the end of the first episode, you're like, well, maybe I'll watch one more episode.
But I loved the first episode. I was enraptured. I thought the first episode was so strong. And that little thing with Himmel, like, when he's... first episode spoilers, I apologize. But, like, when Himmel, the hero, dies at the end of the first episode, right? And, like, he has this little, like... It was like having a full wraparound arc for a character in one episode. In one episode, yeah.
Which is, like, impossible.
And it hooks you so hard because, like, and then you watch Frieren grow through this whole thing, and, like, I can't even describe to you guys, like, in words how good it's been. Like, it's very mature. It feels like you're watching a Studio Ghibli movie that's been stretched out over 28 episodes. It feels like an older anime because all of the work is being put into the animation and the backgrounds, and, like... There's so much love in it. It's frustrating because I really wanted JJK to be the breakout anime, not even of this year, but of this season. And this is just like it, and it's not bombastic too. It's like, what did I say? It's like the difference between someone who's very technically good at the electric guitar to someone who's very technically good at the violin. Like, both take an incredibly amount of technical skill to get to that, but one are going to be more likely classically trained and have a classical base, and therefore have like this more mature and like historical feeling to it. Like, it has like depth to it, right? And the other person's going to be playing electric guitar stuff, which is much more modern, and I don't want to say shallow, but it's like it doesn't have the history to it. This one feels like it has depth and history and love. And
I think for me, it feels like such a departure from a lot of the anime we watch because of sort of the comparison we're making it to JJK, right? Where everything feels not chaotic, but because you're looking at it from like, oh, life is so precious, like it can end at any time, right? Like, that's what it feels like when you're watching JJK, right? Because you're coming at it from like the human perspective, whereas in Frieren, you're looking at it from her perspective, right? You're looking very long term, and then like what that would make you, how that would make you react, how that would make you think, and it's all over the anime, right? Like where the not only the scale, like in terms of the temporal scale, but like how she reacts to like changes or issues that come up, where it's just like, you know, where we told you like you'd be stuck somewhere for 5 years, right? You'd be like, oh my god. Where she's like, you know, 5 years. It's like, yeah, you're like, it's not that big a deal. And it's like, well, that's what it would be like, right? If your lifespan was spanned across thousands of years instead of 100 or less.
Right. It's like, it's a really beautiful plot device, and the anime tackles mortality and the passing of time consistently. Like, it's definitely one of the themes of it, right? And so like having this character who can live such an extended lifetime and being to look through the lens of that character lets us view mortality over and over and over again in this anime. And it's when you're an older anime watcher, you know, like I feel like that's easier to relate to than fighting. Like everyone, like anime now, like you watch it into shonen, it's all about fighting. It's like, I will overcome. And it's like, eventually you get old and you don't just overcome, you live, you know, and you kind of just experience, right? And that's what she's seeing. It's like she has this long life, so she just experiences, right? But she's noticing that humans have to live, they have to fight, they have to experience fast, right? They have to fit shit in. I don't know, and it's a beautiful look at humanity through this fantasy story.
Well, and it's not like a lot of other anime where it's like, you know, there's only this one perspective, right? Where when we get exposed to the other two characters, we get to see like their perspective on it, and like they're way more independent than it feels like in a lot of other shows, right? Like where, let's say JJK, we know that they're all pushing towards the same goal, right? And it's just like brute force every time.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's like, it's more strategic. They're more taking their time, right? Like it's like they're only like, they're on what, episode 9? There's
10.
only like 10.
Yeah.
Well, there's only like what, 3 or 4 fights really, maybe.
I count 2
And it's
that are like really like at least visually like a visual spectacle, you know.
Well, and it doesn't feel like we're missing out on anything.
No,
right?
I don't feel that.
Where
way
if
at
like
all.
JJK had a whole talking episode, you'd be like, oh. Right, I
It's
guess.
like, all right, here you go. But this one, you're right. It is more about the experience, the talking, and this character building. There is a montage in every episode, I will say that, which is, well, except the episodes where there's a fight. There's no, and when there's no montage, but
There's no montage, it's just a flashback.
But the thing is like, you can forgive it every time, because what the montage is it's not like cheap shots of like half CG backgrounds. It's like these like beautiful hand painted backgrounds and these amazing character designs drawn with these full shadows, and like it's breathtaking how beautiful this anime is. Like when you watch the trailer, right, you're like, there's no way they can keep this up. Like there's no way it looks this good the whole time, right? It does. Pro tip, it looks this good the whole fucking time.
Yeah, it 100% has the Ghibli, Ni no Kuni vibes to it the whole time, right?
Yep.
Like that high production value, but just stretched out. Instead of it being an hour and a half to 2 hours, it is, 30 minutes at a time. And if you haven't started watching it, you should start watching it now.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be on the short list of anime of the year for probably most people who've watched it. And I'm not saying you're going to miss out, but if this sounds like where, for me, I'm a little bit burnt out on shonen. Like, it's hard for me to watch them now. And this is like such a good palate cleanser for the things we've kind of been experiencing, right? Like, instead of it being like just, with JJK and Demon Slayer to a degree, where it's like, oh, thank God there aren't these super long fights anymore. Everything's going more quickly, right? Whereas this, it's sort of elongating the storytelling again, which is something that, used to happen a lot more often when making those incredible fight scenes was way more expensive.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas now we're kind of, the cycle, right? We're returning back, right?
But it's like, what's funny too is like So when the budgets were, that's a very astute observation, actually, because like now that I'm thinking about it, it's like when you go back, you have those moments of what seems like high budget, like when someone's hair would move or they would put on a jacket. It would be a character study where it would like to do that animation, they would have to do it very smooth, they would have to look good, but all across the board it would look like that because it wouldn't be like, here's all of the budget for this fight. It'd be like, here's the budget, make an anime, right? That's what it seems like with this. It's like subtle things, very small things are animated as if the budget was given to it for the fight. It feels like the budget is spread across the whole anime as opposed to right in the fights.
Yeah, it feels like we're thinking long term about like what we're gonna spend money on versus we have this much to spend per episode, right?
Yeah, and I think that's definitely because of the staff that is working on it, right? Like, I don't know who it is offhand, but like every single person who is working on this is like
all the leaders, basically.
Yeah. The episode director, the music director, the background director, the character designer, and the animation director. They're all like legendary studio people, like who have worked on huge things. You can look it up. I'm not going to look it up right now, but it's pretty insane how much is getting put
like
into this
it's
anime.
just veterans
Yeah.
where it's like when you hear the story about like, you know, the guy put out the proposal after reading like the first, you know, chapter or whatever.
Yeah.
You're just like, well, you know, everything had to fall into line for this.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really special anime, and I think it's mature, and I think it's exactly what we need right now in anime. I think this is like you just don't get to see stories like this. I'm watching something else called Scavenger's Reign right now, and it's made by Titmouse, which is like the Adult Swim production studios, and it's a serious fantasy sci-fi, and it's like sometimes you want a mature anime or a mature animated cartoon like that to prove that this is still an art form. This is still a medium for art as opposed to entertainment. And not to sound pretentious, but I feel like that's where we're getting to with Frieren. It's really, really, really good.
Sorry, I'm looking at free rent figures now.
You're like, I have to. It's boiling over to the physical world. I have to own them now. But yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about this. We've definitely gushed to a point where we've, I think, been too nice. I think we need to, turn it back around, and I think we need to talk about the end of Attack on Titan.
Oh, the sweet relief for me to never have to hear about this show ever again.
Yeah.
Like this is gonna be like full of spoil. I wish I would have been the one who got to end it. Like, I was so jealous of Mikasa that she got to do it.
Yeah, fuck this anime, dude. I was in for the long haul. Like, I really liked the first season. Like, let's take it all the way back, right? I'll be completely candid with you. When the very first season came out, how long ago was it? Like in 2010 or something like that?
It's 2013. Took them 10 years.
2013. When it came back in 2013, I thought it was a cool concept. I liked, that was like before shonens were killing off people in the first episode to show that they were hard. Like, we're going to kill someone in the first episode. Like, they were cool because Attack on Titan, quote unquote, killed the main character in the first couple episodes. Even though he came back to life, I was like, oh, this is cool. There's some depth to this and there's some thing, blah, 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 right? But, you know, there's a reason we call it baby's first shonen. Sorry, not shonen, seinen, because there's a lot of better seinens out there that you can watch, like, in my opinion, Gantz. If you watch Gantz, Gantz is the superior seinen. If you read Gantz, for that matter, Gantz is an amazing manga. Like, I could seinen, Homunculus, Amoisumi Poon Poon, what's another good one? I could go, the list could keep going on good seinens. Attack on Titan is not one of it. It's a proto shonen with really shitty seinen writing.
So I dropped it, like, I felt kind of the same way the first season, where like those first like 6 or so episodes, there was like, it was hyper violent, it was like super like risk involved, like you didn't know like if these characters were going to survive.
Yeah.
And then around episode 7, which is I think when they had like we're gonna clean this mansion. We're gonna do the trial. Whereas like everything went from super fast to like slow as fuck.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to like season 2, I think I watched 2 episodes of season 2, and I'm like, I don't give a shit about these characters, right? Like, if you're gonna make this a shonen, show me the main characters, because I don't give a shit about these ancillary characters right now. You made the whole first season about a few characters. Those are the characters I want to see, and then they didn't do anything, and I'm just like, this is fucking boring as shit, and I dropped the show.
Okay, yeah, so you dropped the show, right? I dropped it too, but then I picked it up again. And I had almost the same complaints where it was like that. It was like, if you're going to do a shonen thing, right, where you're not going to actually have consequences, show me the main characters, show me how they grow, which is Eren, Mikasa, and Armin, right? The 3 big guys. That's all I really care about. And then, they introduce your Kakashi.
There's 4 big guys, Chris.
Well, yeah, there's 4 big guys, and then there's also 5 guys. But yeah, then, they introduce your Kakashi, which is like Levi. They introduce your Cell characters, and you're like, oh, this is a shonen, right? Especially since it goes into the second arc, which is like a training arc. But I guess the intention is it was trying to make a war anime, right? Which is like, okay, you have this huge platoon of people, you have to fall in love with your platoon. So when eventually they get killed off, which was incredibly predictable, because it's like, you already showed us that you're going to do this in the beginning, right? If you're going to keep it creates this, right, like platoon of characters that they're like, oh, you have to care about. But the problem is it kept fucking introducing these characters. It introduced characters all the way until like the 5th or almost to the final season. It introduced a whole nother island, and then it was like, okay, now care about these people over here, because we're going to make this argument, this philosophical argument, right, that neither side is right and war is wrong, even though we've been building this whole thing about they're subjugating these people because they can turn into titans, and it's like they're purifying the bloodline of the titan people, and it's like, it's so sloppy, the writing is so bad, and it's like, I slogged through it, right, because I wanted to know what happened, and I needed to have some sort of resolution, and I think I knew, Zach, that it wasn't going to be good, right? Like,
what are you talking about? They didn't telegraph that it was going to be bad.
But like, it's not that it wasn't good. It was also unsatisfying. Like, it looks like shit. It's the grossest, ugliest anime out of all of the animes. Would you rather watch this or Black Clover, Zach? That's a hard one, I know, right?
I could watch Black Clover muted, right? Like,
yeah, you can just look at it.
It's mostly the characters. Whereas this, it's like, I was watching it as Chris was watching it, and I haven't watched anything since like season 2. I've seen clips of like, Levi and stuff, the stuff that went viral. But I'm like watching, like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? Like, just over and over again, and then
and not only that,
watching like the ending part, we're just like, what is happening? Yeah. Like, why is it still going?
Yeah, and then every time I'd explain something to him, his reaction would be like, what, that's stupid. And I'd be like, yeah, I know it's stupid. That's the way he wrote it, though. Like, yeah, and it's funny because you're getting like we all know that anime and shonen, but this is supposed to be a seinen. This is supposed to be a serious, mature adult anime, right? But shonen are all about the ass pulls, right? At the very last minute, we're gonna pull something out of our ass that can completely alter the story. A Deus Ex Machina would be the literary term for it, not an ass pull, but you know what we're talking about, right? They were doing it.
And they did it way too much. They did it way too much in just in the last episode.
Yeah, and it was like happening every 5 seconds. They like implanted memories. They were like, yeah, we made you forget, so that's why you didn't know that Eren was actually, guilty about all this. We couldn't do it with an actual story, so we're gonna do it with dream sequences. And it's like, oh my god, like, this is the laziest writing. Zach, it was funny. Remember when you pointed out they're playing baseball?
You're like, yeah, they're like, I've never seen baseball in this entire anime. I feel like, those kind of things wouldn't be important
Not
if
once.
we were constantly on the verge of death, and then he's just holding a baseball. Like, what is that for?
They're having a catch, Zach. That's the father and son. It's a metaphor. It's deep, all right? He saw the imagery once. He saw the imagery once on TV, and he was like, I can use that. I can use that to write my way out of this fucking hole. Oh my lord.
So put your angry comments down below about how we're wrong
Yeah.
and how Aaron did nothing wrong.
Come at us. We'll fucking refute every single one of your questions in the comments. We'll do it. Any comment that you say, we will take the time to refute, because Attack on Titan is not a good anime. And you know what? For everyone that refute, I'll provide you a suggestion for a better anime too.
Yeah, what we start with? Black Clover, because that's how bad Attack on Titan is.
You can literally start. It's like starting from the very, very bottom, right? If it's diarrhea, even solid poop is welcome at that point.
If you thought Attack on Titan was good, just go watch Frieren instead. That's the take-home message today.
You can watch Made in Abyss if you want something that's more violent and you like a little bit crass. Like watch Made in Abyss. Like there's so like.
I mean, Frieren has the vibes of like Made in Abyss,
But it's
too.
it's
Like that was something I was thinking when we were talking about it.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, because that's the other thing we gushed about was Made in Abyss, and we talked about how that was going to be the anime of the year. But you know what? It's November. Next month is December. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and look forward to our anime of the year next month. We'll talk about our final wrap-ups.
It's free red. It's free red. Like,
but we'll talk about it. No, well, don't spoil it. Good night, everybody.